All right, about 5 or 10 seconds here.
What everyone's thinking about. So,
good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the second Radnor Township School District Curriculum Committee meeting for the month of October. It is October 27th. We were only able to get through about half of our agenda from the meeting last week, so we are picking up tonight where we left off. And so we are, though, convening another meeting, so that brings us to public comment. Is there anyone who can answer if there's public comment?
There appears to be none.
I would say they're not shouting loudly, are they? Okay. That then we'll move right on to item 3.1, which is a board agenda action item for, I presume, the business meeting following this. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we do have clubs for the high school. All of these clubs have been previously approved by the school board. These are not new clubs. We're asking that the board move, that the curriculum committee move these forward to the full board, so students can go ahead and get started on these clubs. So we would not be asking for tonight's board meeting, but to move it forward for a future board, for the November board meeting.
So we're used to seeing those all with the stipend that goes with them, I think.
These clubs that are on here are the voluntary clubs. So the teachers volunteer their time, the teachers and the support staff volunteer their time for these clubs. So these are not paid clubs.
So these are the real heroes. So we should probably read their names at the business meeting. These are the volunteer leaders. That's awesome. So yeah, thank you to everyone on that list. I see a lot of really great leaders there. Thank you for volunteering your time. Okay, so are we ready to move into agenda item 3.2, the technology update?
We are ready, and we're very fortunate to have Dr. Hand, Ms. Glatzer, and Mr. Augustine with us. And they had the opportunity to come and present to us last time a little about what's going on in the age of COVID with technology as far as teaching and learning is concerned. So we're thrilled to have them back with us. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dr. Hand, who will give us a little bit of an overview for those people that missed the last meeting, and then he and his team can take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Bechtold and Mrs. Solomon. So last time we were fortunate enough to be able to join this group and share. So we'll give the executive summary of what we had discussed the last time, and what we were really looking at sharing is basically where we are in cyber and hybrid learning, that we're moving into this model of hybrid where we have students both in school and online on different days at the secondary level and at AM/PM on different times at the elementary level, and also some students who are choosing to be fully cyber as well, and some of the work that we've begun to do there. And we looked at two areas in particular. We looked at areas of both instruction and the infrastructure, and really looking at areas of what we labeled as preparation, enhancement, and support. So starting at the spring and then moving into the fall, looking at areas of professional development that we had done to close out last school year, and specifically over the summer, in preparation for any learning modality, whether they were going to be fully present, fully online, which is how we started, and then hybrid as well, and allowing us to move as seamlessly as possible between those three stages, and then having some upcoming professional development, which might actually be a good update. And I'll let Ms. Glatzer in a few seconds share some items there. And then we had shared some areas in our infrastructure and some of the early preparations that we had done over the summer to get ready for fully online and hybrid learning, such as installing new wireless access throughout all 5 of our school buildings, being able to do network monitoring and be able to actually enhance the software and support by purchasing Zoom licenses to be able to move from Big Blue Button into Zoom, to be able to monitor network health and be able to react quickly, as well as integrate new software and new software tools, such as working through Clever. We'll have new subscriptions coming in for Nearpod as well. All of those new and exciting Web 2.0 tools that we discovered in the spring and really thought that would enhance our instruction moving into the fall and many years beyond. And I'll pause at this point and I'll turn it over to Virginia if she wants to add or maybe introduce actually what's coming up on November 3rd.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all again. So we've been busy preparing for November 3rd, which is very commonly a very busy professional development day across the United States. So what we are doing is we're providing custom professional development for elementary and for secondary. For elementary, we decided that three of the tools that the teachers will be using with their asynchronous work in the upcoming, when the kids are at home and in the second half of their day or the first half of their day for social studies and science. So we wanted to make sure that the teachers have the tools that they need to develop those lessons. So Dr. Han mentioned Nearpod, and we have Nearpod coming in to do a virtual professional development. And we're going to be using that for a lot of the science and social studies. We're also going to be using it K through 12. So we have Libby customizing it for the K2 folks and for the 3 to 5 teachers as well, and thinking about how they can use it with their students. And also a tool called Gizmos, which allows for science simulated labs to be done. That way, even if you're in the classroom or if you are at home, you can still be doing a simulated lab and at home, and then in the classroom socially distant. So Gizmos and Nearpod. And then we also have Learning A to Z, which is a tool that we have had for some time. And we want to make sure that the teachers have a solid foundation on that, both K to 2 and 3 to 5 as well. It's 2 different groups. And someone from Learning A to Z is actually going to be doing that professional development. And then we'll also give the teachers some time in the morning to do some asynchronous stuff that gives them time to dig into these tools a bit when they, because it always helps to be able to play and experiment and figure out how best to use it in their particular situation. And then for our secondary teachers, we are going to start out, we're not quite sure yet if we're going to combine middle school and high school for this section of the day, but we're going to talk about successful teaching strategies that teachers have been using for the past 2 months and having our own share with their colleagues what they have been doing that has worked really well. And then the teachers combined middle school and high school will have the opportunity to break out into, we have, I think there's about a dozen topics throughout the morning that they can pick 4 different topics that they can spend about a half an hour in and start to explore that topic. Some of them are led by one of us, and some of them are more of a discussion kind of topic so that they can share what it is that they have been doing in their own classrooms. So that's the way that the secondary is playing out. One of those choices is going to be Nearpod, and Nearpod will be there virtually to provide some professional development. We'll have some drop-in opportunities for them to talk to Dr. Hand, to talk to me, and to talk to the coaches that they are working with throughout the year. So that's what we have planned for the morning of November 3rd.
Thank you for that update. And I think it speaks to all the work that the instructional technology team led by Virginia has been doing throughout, that it hasn't been a one and done professional development where we have our days over the summer and we call it ready, set, go, and then ready, set, go, you're on your own, that there's been continual support that's been there. So having our presence inside of the buildings, being able to continually adapt that online professional development in the Schoology course that team has built, but also for Dan and Sean being able to carve out that time as well in November 3rd to, again, be able to deepen and enrich those lessons learned along the way and be prepared for maybe a future adaptation. We were also able to share last week some items in the infrastructure and some of the work that we had been doing, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Augustine to give a recap of that.
Sure, thanks. So I will try and keep this very brief. But yeah, so last week we talked, and as Dr. Hand said, we implemented all new wireless access points across all of our 5 school buildings. So we made upgrades in that regard. We had an assessment done. We had separate company come out, look over the wireless, walk the buildings, and do a check and make sure that everything was configured the way it needed to be configured, and we could handle all the zooming, all the network traffic that we were sort of expecting, for the coming school year. And we also made some technology purchases. We got every teacher upgraded with their device, got them Surface Pros, Chromebook purchases for 3 to 8, iPad purchases for K to 2, and we filled out the freshmen for the Surface Goes as well. And we made some other changes around their network security, student account security, remote software access. We've been making a lot more use of a product called AppStream, which allows students, teachers to connect to applications that are hosted in the cloud that they may not necessarily be able to run on their local device, but it runs in the cloud, and they can access that through just a web browser. So they don't need to have such a heavy or beefy laptop or desktop computer that they traditionally might need. And that's available to them all hours of the day, when they're at home, when they're remote, or on school grounds. So that's been a big help too. We've been seeing that get used a lot more, and we've also improved our support. We knew that coming in with COVID and everything, that support was going to be important for not just the students but the parents as well. So we implemented a support hotline. We had that manned during school hours, and that it also overflowed to the building techs as well if it got to be too much for the one person. We implemented online forms for help desk ticket creations and tutorials. And I think Scott talked a little bit about the PTO podcasts that he's been recording, and we've also expanded our network monitoring, and we touched a little bit about that. We had a slide, I think, that kind of showed what we look at on a daily basis, because we are so reliant on some of the other cloud providers, third-party softwares, Zoom. I think Dr. Hand mentioned Clever earlier. We use Schoology, so we want to make sure that these apps are up and available, and that we want to know if they're having a problem. So we've developed this dashboard, and this is continually changing, and we're adding to it. It doesn't even look like this anymore now. So we're constantly adding to put more data in front of our faces on a daily basis, so that we know when things are happening on our network and off. I mean, we need to be aware that if Zoom's having a problem, we can communicate that out to everybody efficiently. And so our network is healthy at this point. Everything looks good. Our bandwidth, we're able to so far handle everything that we've been needing to do.
I will share that this monitoring tool and this aggregate data is actually something that Chris put together in his spare time. It's something that we had talked about since me coming aboard, and there's plenty of providers that'll do this, and he actually found something that will integrate for free, and it has paid off in spades, even as late as today, where we had a network issue coming from the DCIU to where we subscribe our internet, but due to this dashboard and some of the systems that Chris actually had put into place, it was only 30 seconds and only about 30% of our users who would notice anything. That we do have that built-in redundancy so we can have as much continuity of service as possible. So having some of these early warning systems were really beneficial as we moved into a new age of digital instruction. We were also able to share some financial updates. We were looking at the past where we had initially intended to go one-to-one, and we were moving the students from the high school off of their iPads to the Surface Gos, with a large influx coming in the 2021 school year, which is something we had already planned, and moving from a 2-to-1 to a 1-to-1 at the elementary levels. And we compared this chart, which had been shared in years past, coming off of the technology committee, and then moving into something that is a little more level as far as a budgetary and fiscal perspective, where refreshes would occur kindergarten, 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade, where those devices would follow those students for those tenures during those grade bands, which would make costs much more level, but also predictable over time so that we could appropriately budget. The cost average across those 8 years in both of those models, it's actually slightly less, just due to some changing costs that are in there. And again, that leveling of that budget, we were able to see those. And then we had shared what we had spent. So those areas on which we had spent money in this very unforeseen pandemic and moving everything online and having a heavy emphasis on technology, but a majority of those areas were actually grant funded. So when we had applied that grant funding, what we had initially spent a little over $1 million. Again, a lot of those costs from the spring of 2020 were already planned. We had done budgetary offsets for the 2021 and 21-22 school year from the technology funds that we were already planning to purchase those devices across the next 2 years. But instead, when we had purchased those in the spring, we simply removed those funds from this year and next year's technology. But we're also able to offset those costs with funds that had come from the state and from the county level. So those costs are being reduced. And there is another county-wide CARES grant for which we have applied and hope to hear back. We have not heard back yet this week, so we hope to hear back this week as far as additional funds that we would be receiving. And lastly, we talked about the future, that this has really begun to shape and change us, that we're beginning to think of new ways to do instruction in ways that we've never thought of it before, and beginning to see new possibilities. We're really seeing the digital possibilities, and what we're hearing from teachers are things that they'd like to keep too. And certainly there are things that they never want to bring back. We want all of our kids back, and we don't necessarily want to do the hybrid all the time, but there might be some outlets for that. We might see some students who want to take more cyber options, especially so that we can prepare them for their post-secondary lives, because we know that cyber instruction is going to be a greater part of their post-secondary lives, especially coming out of this pandemic. And really working with the cohort that has already come together through the PA Smart grant that we had received last year as a school district. So we have a K-5 STEM cohort that's already together, and we have begun working with them so that they can help us begin that future visioning and planning of what a STEM and CS program looks like at the K-5 level, and really beginning to enrich and infuse our programs at those levels with STEM and computer science education. So that is the overview. That's the recap of where we were last week, with the full presentation being online from last week.
Yeah, thank you for that, because there was so much in there, and yeah, I didn't remember a lot of it in exactly the way it flowed. So I want to turn this over to my committee members, because I know there's hot interest in this topic. So who wants to start? Anybody? Ms. Dunn, Ms. Goldman, Dr. Babson, Amy? Oh, Ms. Goldman. Going to be professional here.
I was doing this, offering it up to my fellow committee members, but I guess you mistook that for him.
I thought that was your...
I don't want to preempt anybody who wants to go first. First of all, thank you for that presentation. I feel like looking at that, Silicon Valley has nothing on Radnor because...
Yeah, how about the chart with the, the dashboard? Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. And I just sort of had this vision as somebody sitting there watching like 24/7 to make sure that our infrastructure can support our usage. But I'm sure that, that's something that whether we're thinking it consciously or not is really important. We need to be able to make sure that our bandwidth and infrastructure supports the needs all the time, let alone under these circumstances. So on that front, I guess I wanted to ask is, are you anecdotally hearing any feedback about improvements to the bandwidth from users?
So what we've seen is a lot of stability. So yes, and there's a lot of historic lag too, of knowing that we had some issues in the past with Wi-Fi and internet and being able to upgrade those. And a lot of the issues that we're seeing now are really coming down to the device level, that we're asking a lot of a device that we didn't expect to. Taking that Microsoft Surface Pro that we had given to the teachers, which was really an ideal purchase for more traditional instruction, that we have that tablet computer that enables that freedom and flexibility within the classroom, being able to write on that surface as well, having that stylus to be able to deliver notes, to be able to capture those as well. And when we went into our online and hybrid learning, we wanted to ask a lot more of that device. So plugging in that idea of those external monitors, plus a projector, plus an external camera, plus connecting it to our smartboard, plus running Zoom, plus screen sharing, plus having student video. We're beginning to ask a lot of that device. So teachers are really beginning to find ways to best alleviate some of those pressures on there. And that's where our main area of concentration is right now, of finding the best breed of that hardware to plug in there. And we've been fortunate enough that the Radnor Education Foundation has sponsored a grant for us to be able to purchase some of those additional monitors, but more specifically, docks. So Microsoft Surface docks. So we don't have as much plugging in to that computer and hanging off of there. And hopefully that can alleviate some of that pressure as well. And as we're discovering new clicks and settings inside of Zoom that maybe don't require as much power from that computer. So a lot of our area of concentration right now is on making sure that we can support that device and have it do all of the things that we want it to do, balanced out with the things that it's capable to do. But as far as the internet and our overall bandwidth, we're only using about 12 to 15% of our overall bandwidth. And the Wi-Fi, we have enough density and coverage. And as we're starting to get at least half of our students back, and specifically at the secondary level, because those are the folks who are coming in with multiple devices in their pockets and multiple devices connecting to the Wi-Fi, we're seeing a really strong stability there. But again, it's coming down to the device itself and all of the things that we're asking of it to do the types of instruction that we really want to do.
Okay, great, thanks. In terms of the support structure for staff, there's a point person in each of the buildings, and that person, so staff goes to that person, and then that person goes to Virginia, and then Virginia goes to USCOT. Is that sort of hierarchically how that support structure works, and how is that doing?
So if it's something instructional, they'll go, eventually it'll make its way to Virginia. If it's something on the infrastructure side, eventually it makes its way to Chris. But we've all been, I think, in this time of adaptation. So in a traditional hierarchy, yes, that's how it would work. But right now we're not in traditional times. So just, I think the three of us and the rest of the team, just having that presence in the building and making ourselves available. And folks are not shy about just emailing all of us and whoever gets to it. And that's kind of the way we want it to be right now. We want to all be available and be as responsive as possible. But in a traditional structure, we do have a support technician in each of the buildings. At the middle school and high school level, we actually have two who traditionally reside there full time. In addition to folks at the administration building. And we've just, again, spread ourselves out, and being Mr. Augustine referred to that support hotline, being in the times we actually took one of our building subs and who was working with us, and sadly he's leaving us this week, had received another position, was kind enough to give us 2 weeks as well, who was helping us to monitor that support hotline. That was an additional support. So we brought that on temporarily, because that's when we received a lot of those phone calls were in the beginning. And now those are down to about 1 to 2 a day. And I think that speaks well. But we do know that once he leaves us, that's something we'd like to continue, that we know that we're not just supporting students and teachers anymore, but really focusing on supporting the community and supporting families into the future.
Great, thank you. And I have just two more quick questions, one of which is, I know that when Virginia does professional development, she mentioned this in an earlier presentation, one of the things she does from a pedagogy perspective is help the staff cultivate lessons that are engaging for students. Do you also include a review of how to elicit signs or needs when technology is having an adverse effect on students, so that those signals can be readily picked up, and by extension, maybe offering supports for parents so that they can better support their children and recognize signs when sometimes the technology gets to be a bit too much for students?
So we did have at the start of the year, actually our special ed folks, George and Jenny, pulled together a program on social emotional learning for both the teachers as well as I believe the students actually received something, if I'm not wrong. Is that correct, Mr. Bechtold?
The student presentations are being scheduled now, and we're looking at November. I know that Mr. Dukevich and I were hammering out dates with Mrs. Lesage. So we're looking at the end of November, beginning of December for those. And those are SEL self-care. And so that does tie into the social emotional well-being of our students.
And I think our teachers are very almost hyper aware of what the needs of the students are. At the start, when we talked about being synchronous, the teachers sort of felt like they needed to be the kids and they needed to be in front of the camera for X number of minutes nonstop. And then as things progressed and they talked to me, they talked to their principal, they talked to each other and said, normally I wouldn't be up talking for that many minutes. Can I tweak that so that maybe I could do some rotations and, I might work with a small group of students while another group of students is working independently on something. And I can break that time up so that they're not always staring at the screen. So in fact, I was in a middle school class today and they were doing just that, where, the teacher said to the kids, okay, right now for 20 minutes, you're going to work on these problems. You can turn off your screen and work on those problems. Another teacher said, okay, boys and girls, you need to be on the screen while we're working on this, but I don't necessarily need to see your face. If you would like to make it so you tilt it down so I can see your work while you are working, that's fine too. So that they have that sense that they need to be very aware of what the students' needs are and how they need to break things up. In the classroom, sometimes the kids do have their computers out depending upon what the lesson is and what the activity is that they're doing. So maybe they have them being involved in a discussion thread so that the kids at home and the kids in school can be responding together. Sometimes they don't need to have their computers open if they're in a live discussion in the classroom. So they tweak it as they go, and whatever makes sense, as far as sound instruction goes, that's what they're doing. So I mixed up quite a bit.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And I imagine staff needs that SEL as well. I saw something in a recent conference where somebody suggested even, twisting and turning and moving yourself around a little bit helps break up that feeling of being in front of a screen. And I also just quickly want to mention to Chris Augustine, I didn't mean to leave you out of my question about the hierarchy there, so forgive me for that. I was thinking pure pedagogy, not infrastructure for the moment. My last and final question is, will there be some sort of call for feedback from staff and families in terms of, how the devices are performing, how the schedules are going, how the pedagogy is going, et cetera, at some point? I'm sure you've collected some amount of data, either formally or informally. So forgive me if this question is not relevant, but in the event that it's not, I just had a question about that too.
So I can jump in about the surveying. So I know that we've been having discussions internally as an administrative team, both at the building level and at central office level, about the type of information we want to gather. And I think that your question is broad in scope, Mrs. Goldman. So there's a lot of things going on. I will say that to Ms. Glatzer's credit, that they have been eliciting feedback at the building level. I know that Dr. Hand's really big on making sure that he's in the buildings and getting feedback. So they're getting a lot of that anecdotal stuff. But I also know that they've been putting out, I believe last week, Ms. Glatzer and I went through it. They put out a form to some of the high school teachers to gather feedback on some of the things that were going on there. So they are looking to gather both formal and informal feedback. But as an administrative team, we've been talking about what type of questions would we want to ask if we would survey parents, students, or staff members. So that has been on our radar.
Great. Thank you so much for all the information you just provided.
Okay, Ms. Dunn, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just had a couple. First, I want to thank the team for thinking about the hotline and really being on top of that. I don't think I even told Dr. Hand this, but I actually had a weekend event at our house where we had a smashed screen and many tears. And I said, well, there's a tech hotline, and well, how are we going to have school on Monday? And I just sent the email on Sunday. I said, well, I'll be first in the queue on Monday. That's perfect. I wasn't first in the queue on Monday. I got a response within 10 minutes that Sunday afternoon. I was shocked. I would not have expected that. I don't think people should expect that. It's a 5-day-a-week operation. And if, we're using a device on a weekend and something happens, that's, so I was really, really impressed by that. And, how attentive everyone was about getting that device replaced. So that's wonderful. The other side of that, though, I would wonder whether we have a long-term plan for devices, and a lot of that we had to speed up, but the plan is still for this year's 8th graders to get devices when they show up as freshmen next year. Do you feel like you're learning anything? You said you've learned a lot about what devices the teachers have. Are you learning about the kids' devices and whether we made the right choice in the Surface at the high school? And if that sounded loaded, it is a little bit, but I genuinely, maybe the issues we're having are different than the issues other people are having.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, because I think we discussed it once a week. And I think what we come around to, we'll start out philosophically and we'll talk, and then we'll talk about the logistics and what we actually see and where we'd like to go, and picking the tool that best fits the instructional model that we want to have. And I think where we end up landing all the time is that there is no perfect device. And we see that in some of the migrations and shifts that we've made as well. And I think that's actually a credit to being nimble and saying, if this isn't working, let's go in a direction that is working. And each of them certainly have their pros and cons. And there are times that you don't know until you get those out into the wild as well, that while they look really good sitting before a committee, and when you get out in the wild, you see something different, and they might turn out to be even better. So that's a very holistic way of saying that it's something that we discuss. And again, I don't think there's necessarily a wrong device, that it's the right tool for the right level. We're seeing a lot of benefits of having the touch capabilities, specifically at that 3rd all the way through 12th grade level, that you have a stylus equipped device. So again, looking for that device that's best of breed, that it's not just a traditional form factor laptop, and it's not just a plain tablet, but sort of fits the best of both worlds. Now, when you go there, you're going to have some compromises, such as we're seeing with the teachers right now. It's not the most robust gaming computer that can handle 27 monitors and, full interactive immersive reality. It's capable of doing a lot of those productivity tools, and really being able to invest. And we talk about that idea of that phrase that had come up in the technology community, the idea of the full service device. Being able to have those tools that our students are going to see as they move through levels, but also as they're going to see in their post-secondary career. It began to, even as we migrated there at the high school level, I think Virginia had said that this, when we were discussing it this week, begin to reveal some gaps as well, that the students were really acclimated to an iPad or more immersed in a very broad Google world, that when they got into some of those productivity tools and looked at areas of file organization, file structure, they didn't necessarily have the background and they weren't ready to do that. So it took a little bit of a lift. So while an initial transition to any device it is difficult. Like if I ask some folks, hey, I'm going to take away your PC and put a Mac in front of you or vice versa, it might be, oh no, I don't know a lot about that. And I think some of our students saw that as well initially. And as they are on that device more, as our teachers and our staff are on those devices more, they're getting much more acclimated to that. And I think coming out of this year where they're most fully immersed in that environment, this will be the true tell right now. Like,
Yeah.
was it able to handle all of those different modes?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, the one piece of feedback I've seen, my middle and high school students are both fully virtual, and I see two devices in use regularly, one for the video and one for the online work that they're doing, the touchscreen work. And I'm not advocating that we give every student two devices. It's just one of those things I've noticed. You know, if you threaten to take away a device as punishment, you have to give it back for school because otherwise school doesn't work. So, but no, thank you very much. You guys clearly are putting a lot of effort into it, and it shows from last year, the work that's gone in.
Hey, are you through, Sarah?
I am.
Dr. Babson, you want to hone in here?
Sure. I just want to, first of all, say thank you. This has been a huge part of our success, I think, of late, that we've been able to make this adjustment, that our teachers are doing a heroic job, I think, of rising to the challenge. And also, I think a lot of credit has to go out to our community as well for also rising to the challenge. So just wanted to say that. I think just on a practical note, a lot of good questions have been asked already. So one just really practical question from here. So if parents have maybe not, what if they have a lot of technical questions? Could they talk to, let's say, is there a, there's a hotline and there's people that are ready to answer very sort of discrete little questions about technology, but what if they have bigger questions? PTO leader, I think, would be probably my guess, but do you have any thoughts on that?
So something that we're looking at expanding, and Chris had highlighted as well that we had talked about last week, is right now we have a podcast that we're developing with the district-wide PTO right now. Actually, it started at Res. But the initial conversation prior to the idea of a podcast and sharing ideas from families, so we interview experts, but also other family members. So it's families talking to families about strategies and how they're working at home, whether it's technical issues or about building resilience, or how much help or support do you give them or allow them to go out and work on their own before they throw a tantrum? Like, when do you allow them to build resilience versus helping that crutch? But the idea actually started prior to the podcast about having some after hours support. So as Mrs. Dunn talked about as well, having not just that 9 to 5 or 8 to 3 Monday through Friday support, but we know that learning happens 24/7, and especially in this world. So we were looking at some of that support. So our quick entry into supporting parents was that podcast, but having that idea of having the PTOs have some areas of support. So we've already begun to elicit and look for some volunteers across all of the buildings who can at least help and provide, number one, just in a listening ear sometimes, because sometimes it blends over between the technical issues and sort of dealing with at home, like how much screen time is too much screen time. It's actually one of our podcasts, and just listening to parents. So that is still on the burner for us to be able to open up some of those supports for some of those longer term conversations.
Okay, thanks. And I guess there could also be a technical side to that too. So if there are more specific technical questions, or maybe maybe someone wants to have a conversation. And I just say that because I've had a number, this is just part of being a board member, but a number of parents ask you about things, and I'll say, well, I think, you can go here, you can go there. But, let's say, for example, you have several questions that might not be easily answerable about technology that you want an answer to. So a podcast is a great idea for getting a conversation going, for, making people feel like they're not alone and those kinds of things. But maybe just what's the right forum or the right person to talk to about, perhaps several technological issues, rather than just, hey, do I need to press this particular button or something,
Yeah, but if it's something programmatic, I mean, I certainly welcome some of that feedback, and I've had many parents write to me. And sometimes it's easier expressed in a phone call. Just, hey, can I give you a call? We can talk through it rather than me trying to type out some of that dialogue. But looking for some of those ongoing lines as well, because even if they come through a PTO, it might be something that multiple people are having questions about. They might have some of those same questions, and learning about some of the avenues for sharing that information back out. Sometimes posting it on the web isn't always the best. We don't always go digging or find it on the right spot. So if we share that out, that if it does come through a PTO, we can share it back through that way. But they're certainly welcome to reach out to any one of us, since the three of us who are represented on the call today.
Okay. I hate to sign you up for more work, but but it's good as a board member to have at least a couple of answers in mind. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Are you finished?
I'm done. Yep.
Okay. I have just really three things, and they're wildly different topics. I think the first one is for Mr. Dukovich. So the students that are in elementary school that are 100% virtual are following a curriculum. And then the rest of the students are coming in half days. So how are we syncing those two kind of different curriculums? Like, in other words, are the 100% virtual kids getting way ahead? Like, what does that look like?
It's a great question, Lydia, and it's kind of it's an experiment in the making, really. I mean, we have two different instructional programs running concurrently. We're trying very hard to maintain pacing, and we had a lot of intentional design this summer with planning out the first 12 weeks of the school year and using weekly overviews, so that whether everyone was remote or everybody was a combination of hybrid and remote, that we would maintain a similar pacing amongst those two different modalities. The interesting thing is the instructional delivery time between a remote interface, which some people and some research has suggested takes longer than in person. And then while we have the students in person, we're talking to half the class. So if right now we were providing the same instruction to 4 people rather than 8 or something like that, would our pacing be any faster or less fast, or more efficient or less efficient? These are the things we're figuring out as we go. So the 2.5 hours while students are in person, there's very little transitions, there's very little disruptions. There's a heavy focus on ELA and mathematics instruction with, again, 10 students, sometimes less. Conversely, when they're online, you're talking to a class and a whole group of upwards of 20 students. And then you're doing breakout groups where they're doing some independent work and the teacher's kind of rotating between them. So the question comes down to, it's a great one, is which one is more efficient for instructional delivery? But there's so many variables. It's the time, it's the small group, it's the teacher and their method of delivery. So I can't give you a firm answer yet. It's almost like I mentioned, an experiment that sounds cavalier. It's really, we're learning as we go. Dr. Kearney and I are meeting regularly with the different cohorts, whether they're department leaders in each of the buildings in hybrid or the cyber cohorts monthly. And we're evaluating where we are pacing wise. And we're trying to make, smart adjustments and monitoring it closely. But frankly, I don't have a great answer for you besides the fact that we're very closely monitoring it. We're revising as we go. And I do think those differences in size of the group and the delivery of instruction in person compared to remote, those things may almost even themselves out in some way. smaller amount of time, smaller group compared to larger group, a little bit more time, but done remotely. I don't know if that's a good answer for you, but that's where we are today.
It's a great answer because I wondered, and I don't know how you would know, really. We haven't been at it that long. So, okay, good, fair enough. We'll find out. Now, how is the virtual 100% virtual teacher? How are they able to differentiate for their 20 students, like virtually? How do they figure out, kind of what everybody's doing? Have you figured out a good way to do that?
So one of the things we did from the beginning is we built out our intervention and extension block. So that is part of the AM and PM, and it's the same time period for every grade through all three buildings with the hybrid teacher. So a fourth grader at Radnor Elementary and a hybrid fourth grader from Ithan could actually be accessing similar services at the same time. We wanted to line that up so we could be most efficient. Two, our schedule allows for whole group and then several small groups. So as the teacher, just like any year, evaluates their class and finds out where they are, whether it's ELA or math, they group their students accordingly. So they'll have, maybe an accelerated group, maybe an on-level group, maybe a group that needs more enrichment and remediation. And then they meet with them in small teams. We also built on the virtual group a flex block, an I&E block right after lunch that is not a whole group and it's not a small group for every day. It's really for the teacher to determine, all right, today I'm going to meet with these 3 kids, or today I'm going to meet with a student and their parent because I'm finding there's an issue we need to talk through. Or today I'm going to meet with another reading group I didn't get to in the morning. So we built that flexibility into the schedule as well. So there's a lot of things we're trying to be proactive with, Lydia, that, we're kind of seeing the fruits of how it's going, and we're trying to revise as we go. Dr. Kearney, myself, I know a number of other administrators join us, but each month we're meeting with that cyber team and we're listening to them. They're working very, very hard, and one of their struggles has been new content creation. So we're working on the back end to support that now. But no, the personalization and the differentiation component, that's really critical. The nice thing about the online is that you can have small groups and breakout rooms. And because of Scott and Virginia's professional development, we've been able to teach our teachers how to do that effectively. And certainly it's an ongoing process, but those online tools enable us we've gotten better and better at doing those things. Yeah.
So, and I think this is true, but the way we kept the groupings, either if you're virtual or hybrid, they're mixed abilities, right? Every grouping, is, I don't want to say random, but somewhat, has children of all different levels, correct?
That is correct. Everything's heterogeneous. We don't track in elementary.
Yeah.
We do have accelerated math groups when students qualify under criteria, but otherwise they're all heterogeneously grouped.
Yeah. Do we still have different reading groups? Like, would that be occurring in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade kind of thing?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And even in primary grade. So, we use things like Literally, our new version of F&P testing. We use Dibbles, other, our curricular assessments to evaluate where students are, and then we place them. Foundations is another piece we use still, of course. And we have our reading support folks who come in, our paraeducators. They use Zoom to support students different times when their teacher can't meet with them. And it's very much personalized by their level. So we meet them where they are. We obviously project to move them forward incrementally. And I think we've done a pretty good job at it. Obviously, it's a work in progress, and we're certainly learning along the way.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear that, because it just seems like such a monumental task. It's so hard to do in person. I mean, so you just have my admiration for having it this well under control, this, like a month in. So
the admiration belongs to the teachers and the principals. Honestly, they're doing the work, and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I know somebody answered this, but I just want to hear again. What are we doing about households that maybe don't have internet? I think we're providing or buying hotspots, or can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So we have two different programs right now. We have hotspots that are available for families who are in need or unable to afford. We have about 11 families right now. So we took our list of known families from the spring and used that as a springboard to make sure that we were reaching out to them. And REF also has, again, generously offered to support families through Comcast Internet Essentials program to pay for a year's subscription of household wireless internet access.
Okay. It's a much smaller number than I thought. Okay. I just had no idea, the level of resources. So that sounds totally under control. My last question, I just ballpark, this is a finance question, if I have this right. So the big changes in expenditure over what we planned, it looks like it was mainly for K through 5, and it's almost $350,000, we spent earlier than we anticipated. Is that right? And then it looks like another 50,000 grades 6 through 12 to get technology to everybody. Am I reading this right?
Yeah, some of those expenditures specifically for the teachers and looking at the one-to-one were planned expenditures, just not all within 1 year. We were going to
Right.
for years. So yes, that is correct.
Okay, so that's the amount kind of that was moved up. And then I really liked the way you showed how all these grants, and kudos to you, all of you, for applying for those and getting them, because it's really impressive how you were able to get a lot of funding for that. So when I first heard, that we blew our budget like double, it concerned me. And then now I see that, no, actually we came out ahead. So yeah. So that's really all I had specifically on this. I know this is a work in progress. So this is a really broad question, but how are you going to go about capturing what we're doing well and putting that into practice as we move forward?
I'll talk about it a little bit from the pedagogy point of view. One of the questions that we have been asking teachers as we meet with them, whether it be the teachers in the pilot or the teachers who are teaching together in the integrated classrooms. In fact, those are some of the breakout rooms that we're going to have on Tuesday, is those groups of people talking to each other. The teachers who are hands-on kinds of experiences like art and science, and where they typically would have the kids building some kind of project in class. What is it that you're doing that you'll take with you? I met with a teacher the other day, one-on-one, who was actually in the pilot and is now back in school, and said, so what did you learn from that experience? What are you going to take with you as you move forward? And I think that's one of the big questions. What is the takeaway? What worked really well that you said, gee, I never would have tried this before, and now that I have tried it, I really like it, and I can see how it could apply when we're back in the classroom and everybody is there. So it's that ongoing conversation and, for lack of a better word, forced reflection, to get the teachers to think about it and say, okay, I'm using this now. I can see how I could use it later. How would I change it? And think that through. I think as we move forward, the coaches who are working with the teachers, that will be part of the conversation. Intentionally having those conversations with small groups of teachers to really say, we did this well, and this is what we want to keep.
Yeah, so that sounds promising, that there is space. It seemed to me we're running so fast that there wouldn't be we wouldn't even know where we've been. But so you think there is space and the possibility of people reflecting on what they're doing at this point, or are we still just running really fast?
I think that's what I hear the most from teachers that they want, is that ability for that. You used a good word, Lydia, space, to have the time to talk about that. And we did our best for Tuesday's professional development to facilitate those conversations in hopes that we can continue that as we move forward throughout the year. I still, as a teacher said to me the other day, Virginia, you know what? I'm doing a good job teaching, but what it takes me to get to that point is much different and takes a lot of time and effort. So, we're very cognizant of that in every conversation that we have with the teachers.
Yeah, I don't want to take any more time on this because it's, we don't have an answer, but I'm just pleased to hear that you're thinking about capturing, what you've learned from this.
And I'd just add too, just the entire administrative team, a little over a week ago, we did an activity as an administrative team, and we came together and we talked about, what worked well in the spring and what would we have done differently in the spring. And then also we looked at the fall, and we got into small groups and talked about what worked well and what would we have done differently in the fall? What did we learn? And then we also had an overarching question, and this is the entire administrative team. We had an overarching question about what are the things that we are doing now that will last beyond COVID? What are the things that are going to have an impact on teaching and learning for the positive? What could have an impact administratively for us with structures or teachers? So looking at the whole organization, and again, this was all administrators, K to 12 were involved in this discussion, and it's been really helpful to just take that time away, as frantic and as crazy as everything is, as we're trying to figure out, just being open day to day. We're trying to make the space and the time to look at what are we learning, and what things, do we want to build upon that are, possibly improving our practice, and what things do we know we don't want to continue, what things aren't working well, and identifying those as well.
Yeah, good. So I think we need to move along. Shall we move to topic 3.3, the update on the staffing and the substitutes?
We could certainly get started with that. So it is 3 minutes from 6. So I would ask Ms. Solomon, what would you like to do? We do have the highlights of this in the presentation for the board meeting tonight. So we could certainly start the presentation and get as far in as we could, and or we can just I think we do have one public comment that came in.
Yeah.
So we could read that, and then we could. Mr. Stitzel and I are both planning on speaking at the presentation tonight at the board meeting.
Well, can we get the full presentation if we defer it to the board meeting? Will we hear the whole thing then at the board meeting, or do we have details that need to precede what they're going to say?
So the board meeting is, I think it's like 6 slides of the presentation that is a synopsis. It's like an executive summary of what this of this hard copy document that we've got. If
it's okay with the committee, do you mind giving a few minutes to getting this started? We promised to give you dinner at some point. Is it okay?
I may have to drop off at a certain point, but I'd like to hear the presentation.
Yeah.
So that's fine. If I don't ask questions now, I'll ask them this evening at the board meeting.
All right, let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Well, I have to thank Mr. Stitzel for joining me. He and I worked together on this. And so one of the most important qualities when you're looking at school-related learning is and measurements of student achievements is the quality of the teacher. And that is a direct impact on how well the students learn. Ultimately, there's been a significant decline in the number of undergraduates that are going into education, and this has been impacting both schools across Pennsylvania and neighboring states. It has also been impacting us as a district and other districts around us with finding substitute teachers. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about what's been going on and why it's been happening and what RTS2 has been doing. So to get started, we'll talk a little about the definitions of so you understand when you look at these different charts coming up. Mr. Stitzel, you want to talk a little bit about the definitions for us?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Bechtold. We have 4 definitions here. Basically, a level 1 teaching certificate is the traditional way most of us think people get a teaching certificate. You enroll into a college or university into an approved program that is approved by the state. You then go through that coursework. You ultimately get into your student teaching. With successful completion of your student teaching, you take a test, which is called the Praxis in Pennsylvania, and that ultimately qualifies you when you pass that, and the university submits your name to the state in order to get your level 1 certificate. So a lot of what we call rookies have level 1 certificates. Now with the presentation, in-state and out-of-state also refer to level 1 certificate holders. So the in-state are those people who have just gone through the process again. They're typically right outside of their student teaching experience. We also have reciprocating agreements with many states in the United States. Pennsylvania is one of the more stringent states that has their scores for their teachers. So it is harder for some teachers to come into Pennsylvania that have gotten their teaching degrees outside of Pennsylvania to get out-of-state certification. But if they are able to do that, they will be issued a certificate as well. They already have teaching certificates in other states. You also have add-ons. So if you have a teacher that teaches English or history or math and they would like to add an additional certification, they do not have to go through the whole student teaching process again. They just have to take the praxis, and once they pass that praxis, they submit the information to PDE, and PDE will grant that certificate. Not all certificates, keep in mind, are able to be added on, but your major subjects are able to be added on. Mr. Bechtold?
So when we look at the teacher certificates issued, the crest, or the highest year that we've had on record in the last 10 years was 2012, 2013. And you can tell Mr. Sitzel talked a little about the in-state, the out-of-state, and the add-on. So we're looking at this. You see a clear decline in the number of certificates issued for teachers. And one of the things that I'll point out as we look at these, there's approximately 500 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. So when you look at, these are the most frequently issued certificates that in the state of Pennsylvania. There were 216 people that graduated with a teaching degree in mathematics for the state of Pennsylvania in the most recent year, which is 2018, 2019 data, which is most recent. So you figure there's 500 school districts. Some school districts have multiple high schools, multiple middle schools, and you have 216 teachers for the state in math. And this is the most frequently issued certs. When we come down here and look at the least frequently issued certificates, in 2018-19, we had 5 Latin teachers that the state produced and 7 German. Looking at physics, pretty much every high school in the state of Pennsylvania's got physics. There are 44 physics teachers that were produced. So when we look at, trying to replace a good teacher, having someone that would retire, it becomes very challenging, specifically for certain subject areas. So one of the things that we've done is we've tried to think creatively, and we'll talk a little about the creative ways that we're trying to make sure that the buildings are staffed.
So one of those problems we have with those few certificates is we have people retiring, and typically teachers retire anywhere from the beginning of June to the beginning of September. That's been an increase of 31% up from last year for that June 1 to September 8 timeframe. If we look at the first week of September, which was this year, we're up 414% compared to 2 years ago. So it's a huge increase in that time. I believe a lot of people were looking at COVID and trying to figure out what they were going to do, but we did have a huge increase in retirements in the first week of September. We have a substitute service. We had a vendor a couple of years ago. We switched vendors into Insight 2 years ago. Well, actually a little over a year ago. This past summer, Insight was bought out by Kelly Services, so they are a new provider. With that, they supply us with clerical staff, paraeducators, and teachers as well. We actually are employing everybody they have. So Kelly Services, anybody that is willing to work in Radnor 5 days a week as a para or a teacher, we are employing. So they have no more people left to send us. So unfortunately, we looked at other providers to see if they would supplement us. They would not do that. I also contacted other districts that had their own substitute teachers that they employ, thinking maybe we could get them for the month of September while they were still out. We weren't able to do that as well. But currently, substitutes that are through Kelly are getting paid $150 per day for their services. We also have, to supplement the substitute pool, we've posted on our website. And what we'll do is if people are interested, because some people may not want to go through Kelly in order to be a substitute teacher. So we put it on our website, and ultimately we will guide them through the services and try to get them into Kelly to employ with our students as well. Student teachers, something we looked at, what we're going to do to help with the shortage. So we contacted some universities and find out if anybody was in the teacher preparation program that currently had a bachelor's degree, because we can emergency certify people if they have a bachelor's degree. So we were able to contact Temple University. They responded that they had some people that were interested, and we were able to hire one person that satisfied our criteria. So we are trying to do everything we can. We've also contacted local universities to see if they're interested in putting out information to their current students that they can maybe come and help us as a substitute para.
So when we look at thinking creatively, we created the secondary Proctor pilot, and this gave us a flexibility with allowing a small group of highly trained teachers to teach from home. The district employs over 300 teachers. We had 17 that started in this program. These teachers teach from home. We have either paraeducators, substitute teachers, or other Radnor teachers that are their colleagues that serve as the proctor for the class, and go in and ensure the students are safe, that adherence to the health and safety plan, like mask compliance is being undertaken. They take attendance, they take care of if there was an emergency drill. So again, because of COVID, we kind of had to think outside the box, and this is one of the ways that we could keep a veteran, highly trained, highly qualified teachers providing the best instruction to our students during these challenging times. We've also went through as a district and identified paraeducators, so members of our support association that have active teaching certificates and that were not in the classroom, and sought them out and have either temporarily or permanently placed a number of them in classrooms to serve as teachers. So we really look through to see who's an aspiring teacher that has the credentials that hasn't been able to break through yet, that we can change their status. And so we were able to do that to staff some of our openings. Additionally, we've had administrators that have been jumping in, both building level and central office administrators to serving as substitutes. And so that's one of the ways that we've tried to cover that. I can't thank our building administration enough. They've really been diving in because we have been experiencing shortages. Changes in practice. So in previous years, we've secured substitute teachers for teacher professional development trainings. And one of the things that we've put on hold this year is pulling teachers out of classrooms because we know the subs aren't there. And so really looking at keeping teachers in the classrooms just to teach, and prioritizing that, because we know that finding a substitute to cover them is just going to be a significant challenge.
And as this committee knows, we have a great administrative team, and we're always monitoring situations in all of our departments. And in this particular case, we do know that there are other districts that have current teaching employees that the teachers cover their classes and they pay them to do that during their prep periods. Other districts have canceled their electives or specials, and they're reallocating that staff to the core content classrooms. So as always, we will continue to monitor and try to do what's best for Radnor in these interesting times. We also have the plug we're going to put in here that if there's anybody who loves working with children, willing to support education at Radnor, please go onto our website, or you could click this link if you're on the meeting information, and feel free to apply, and ultimately we'll get you in to help us out. Mr. Bechtel, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Solomon, I think that's the end of our presentation.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate hearing that information. I think that that's something I'd like the community to start absorbing. I'm not sure that everybody's aware of how challenging it is to find competent teachers right now. And obviously that's the backbone of running, a school district. So it's really This is such timely information. So I really appreciate hearing all that you're going through to try to keep us moving. Do the committee members want to quickly, was there something that jumped out at you that you want to follow up on? Yeah, Ms. Dunn?
Yeah, I had just two things. One, I think you said, and I just want to make sure this is clear. You said that substitutes who work through Kelly, the substitute gets paid $150 a day. That's not necessarily what we're paying, but that's what the substitute will get.
Correct. The substitute gets
Okay.
$150 a day. We have a 32% upcharge through Kelly.
Okay. The other question I had was, I know you said we've reached out to recent graduates or local colleges. If someone graduated from college in another state and doesn't necessarily have a teaching degree, do they qualify? Is there a way that we can work with them if they meet our other criteria? Or do you have to really have gone to school in Pennsylvania?
No, if you obtain a bachelor's degree, we are able to emergency certify you to be a substitute teacher. And if you choose not to do that route, we can definitely bring you in as a substitute para as well.
Okay. So that's an opportunity for people who may have students who've graduated recently and are home looking for something to do. If this is an area they thought they might like to try, a career they hadn't necessarily thought of before, it might be an opportunity now.
Correct. And what we're doing is, kudos to the technology department. Before we even started the school year, we brought all of our substitutes in, made sure they were trained, that they would be able to step into those positions that are virtual when we were doing virtual and as we are doing virtual. That way the education can continue.
Great, thanks.
And there are a lot of hurdles. You know, if you want to be a substitute, there's clearances. You know, there's Act 168 forms that do background checks. There's a lot of pieces to it, even for substitutes, which does add to this as well. You know, those hurdles that are part of becoming a teacher. And I know our HR departments can works through with people. It helps them and walks them through that, but there are a lot of components to it.
It's not something you want to do just for the next couple of weeks till you hear about another job. It's something, if you think you really might be interested in teaching and hadn't realized there were opportunities, there are.
Well, I would say yes, only because if people are listening. We are looking for people. So if we just sent out an email, and I think it was a suggestion from somebody on our school board, you know, that, you know, some recent graduates who are home, maybe haven't found work yet, but, you know, would enjoy working with students. You know, we're looking for people that, you know, for both the paraprofessional ranks, for the substitute ranks, we are looking for people, even if it is for a short time period.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
I see Ms. Goldman has her hand up.
To follow on that discussion, have we reached out to the career offices of all of the colleges, the regional colleges in Pennsylvania? Because if students are graduating and struggling to find jobs, maybe that's where the best place to reach those students would be.
We have reached out to the locals, you know, within 25 miles or so. We have not gone to Penn State and those type of things, but it's something we can look into.
Dr. Babson, anything come to mind? I have one question. At what point do we need to have a discussion about what we can simplify so that we can keep, you know, the highest quality teacher in front of our students? Because it might be that we can't keep going if we just don't have personnel. And there might be a way, you know, there might be things, again, I call it triage. There might be things that we think, you know, that we can put on hold so that we can keep going with the stuff we have to do academically now. At what point do you think we need to start having that conversation, if at all?
I think that, you know, one of the things that as administrative team that we do is we monitor and, you know, we look and try to anticipate where we're going to have needs. You know, one of the things that I'll say about our sub pool is we've had a number of people that have been through Kelly, who is our sub provider, that we've got a chance to kick the tires on, and they've come in and they've served as a substitute for us, and then they've ended up getting a long-term substitute job with us. So I think that we are going through And I know that Mr. Sitzel has been working diligently and communicating with both the building principals, Mr. Dukevich and I. And we're going to keep at it. One of the things that the district has done is partnered with the HR department's partnered with the communications office, and talking with Mr. Batiti about the number of clicks, and he is an analytics guru there. So he was looking at some of the analytics for our tweets. He was talking to me about a tweet from mid-September that had like 1,300 views on it. So we are trying to work out and really get the word out. At this point, we don't feel that there's a need for us to prioritize things and say this isn't going to run. And so right now, we're hitting it hard, trying to get people to apply and looking at creative ways to keep our building staffed. But we aren't at a point where it's where we're looking to cull programming to fill other programming at this point.
And we, you're going to see a video in my superintendent's remarks at 7 o'clock, which is, again, well done video from, thank you for the team and everyone who's put that together. But you're going to see Dr. Wadlick, our middle school principal, teaching a class. The video could have caught Mr. Bechtold, could have caught any administrator. We have administrators jumping in and helping, with this challenge of the shortage of substitutes. It is day to day, and we all pitch in, and people are willing to pitch in, which is great. And we're going to have to monitor this each day to see where we are. So that's part of the appeal that we're putting out there, that we are looking for support.
Well, I think it's great that you guys are getting back in the classroom. I would imagine there's a party that kind of likes that, but it did occur to me that as more and more districts, though, maybe do start up in person, we may find our sub pool diminishing because there'll be more competition closer to home potentially, but we'll see what happens. I hear you. It's day by day. Do we want to move to the public comment quickly? I know we have one.
We do. I can read that. This public comment is from Gail Morrison, 111 Poplar Ave, Wayne, PA. In response to recent communication reports about the substitute staffing shortages Radnor and every other school district in PA is experiencing, I would like to submit comment as one who got a PDE emergency teaching certificate last year. It took dozens of hours across months with wait time as each piece in the process played out. Many were 7 to 10 days long. Appointments for fingerprints and doctor's visits, requests for college transcript, and all of these things via many different web portals and private contractors for testing and fingerprinting. My out-of-pocket cost was about $500. I was determined to finish the process while I was also doing other paid work so I could tally how long it took, at what expense, and how many processes there were to navigate. Not everyone could afford to do this, whether it's time or financial constraints. I know you have discussed these acute staffing shortages at the curriculum committee meeting last week. I'd like to urge the board to do more specifically advocacy work around this, especially via its meetings with legislators and other district members of PSBA. All of us need to wake the PA Department of Education up and get them to act. Radnor is fortunate to be able to find the money to make these things work. Many other districts are not in this position. Certainly consult with the administrators and staffing professionals who do this work every day. They can tell you more than I can, but I'm certain that these shortages are due in part to these outdated and confusing regulations and processes around getting a teaching certificate and a substitute teaching certificate in our state. For instance, all school personnel must, under the school code, get a tuberculosis test. This includes the daily substitute teachers. In 1997, 23 years ago, according to the PA Department of Health, the legislature is supposed to be eliminating this test in line with the AAP, CDC, and the American Thoracic Society's guidance that said these tests are unnecessary due to low population incidence and extensive vaccination. The CDC doesn't even recommend them in healthcare setting anymore. This letter can be seen here advising school districts of this. Evidently, the legislature never made the school code change, and PDE and the PA Department of Health haven't been more proactive in supporting school districts still subject to the school code mandate. This test requires 2 doctor's visits exactly 48 hours apart and costs $200. As insurance doesn't cover it, likely because it's not necessary or recommended any longer. It is small bureaucratic hurdles like this that can cull the pool of subs and teachers. All of this is administered by different staffing agencies working with internal district HR, and all are complying with the DCIU rules that interpret that the PDE rules, and each school district has slight differences among them. The certification goes district by district, not county-wide, much less statewide. The DCIU's process and requirements aren't even the same as the CCIU's. You get where I'm going with this one. One streamlined process is overdue and necessary. IT's already housed ultimately at PDE, with each employee having a record and PPID number. IT's just administered very poorly. I can't imagine. It's just administered very poorly. I can't imagine how much more time consuming and complex the level 1 teaching certificate is. It seems likely that the decline in numbers of new teachers we are seeing in PA exhibited last week in charts is due in part to the attrition of people from the College of Ed to the teaching pipeline. Furthermore, PDE should be more proactive in pursuing reciprocity with other states to allow teachers who are already certified in other states to teach in PA. It's not that our teaching standard is higher or better, just not aligned and overly complex. I think you could find instances like this in a lot of areas of public education where regulatory complexity breeds cost, and that hurts districts' ability to do their jobs. It doesn't provide for better education and safer schools. We should be finding and addressing issues like this and demanding upward accountability of PDE. I'd like to see our school board focus its government relations effort here, as opposed to the efforts that are more ideological or politically driven. And that is it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bechtold. I did skip over an agenda item. Is there any new business? Okay, seeing none, I do have to make the excuse for Ms. Dunn. She had to quickly get off the meeting, but luckily we are finished. Our next curriculum committee meeting will be November 17th at 5 p.m. Thank you, everyone, because we had a lot of work this month, and I really appreciate getting through all of this. So this meeting is adjourned.